All right, let's get started. Good afternoon. Yes. Okay. So today we're going to do three things. We're going to review where we are, sort of in general. We're going to do some reflecting on the projects and the feedback on the projects and the papers and all this sort of stuff so we can kind of be clear. And we're going to get into work on relationships and one-on-one meetings, sort of the fundamental practice that we talked about in the skill session the other day, but we're going to talk about more today. But we've finally completed our teaching team, and so I'd like to introduce our TF number 7, who just arrived, Rowan Zain. Ron, would you come down and introduce yourself?
Thank you all for your patience. I'm finally here. So just a minute and a half about myself. My name is Rowan. I was born in Jordan, and when I was 8 years old, my dad, who used to work in Taxi Jordan, was transferred to Taxi International. So my life was turned upside down, and we started moving around. We lived in Cyprus, Egypt, Connecticut, Jordan, back and forth. And as I grew older, I came to realize that I am living in a very secluded expat community as an outsider, and it was very hard to understand the community that I was actually living in. So I started to volunteer so I can actually understand what Egypt was really about. And senior year, I went and I volunteered on the UNDP project for Siwa to teach people how to use the computers and the internet. And this was the year 2000. And we stood up in front, and then and Siwa, just as a bit of background, Siwa is a very rural area, which is a farming area. So we ended up teaching people there how to use computers. And I distinctly remember one farmer raising his hand, asking us about the internet and how he can get access to information on how to bee for his bee farm. But the content was all in Arabic. So I left after this project senior year, completely disillusioned about development in the Middle East. And I decided to study advertising and public relations here in Emerson College. And then senior year, I took a course called Social Liberal Movement. And I distinctly remember my professor coming up in front of the class in big bold letters writing "the right to live." And that was when I was awakened and I realized that I was standing on the wrong side of the fence. I didn't want to be the one writing press releases defending the factories. In fact, I wanted to be with the workers. So I moved back to Jordan in hope that I could understand this country that I came from but never really lived in, and to also see how I could help there. And I was working at Columbia Middle East Research Center, where I met Nassim Ahmed, who was teaching the online course for community organizing. And she told me this would be a really great course for me to take, and I took it, and I fell in love with the idea of community building, as someone who constantly struggled with that, and the concept of power, which I thought was what was really missing in my experience in Siwa. And that's where I got this passion to teach community organizing, and I've taught it online in 2011, 2012, and I'm teaching it again online this year, and with you guys, so thank you very much.
I should say, Rowan has also been involved in the on-the-ground campaigns and training projects in Jordan and in Syria and in Lebanon, sort of developing this whole capacity in that whole other context. We're really glad to have you here. Okay, let's see. We have some logistics. Art?
So just a quick announcement. Want to remind folks that tomorrow, Wednesday night, we'll be having the skills workshop number 2 on relationships, where we'll really be focusing in on one-to-one meetings. I know folks are out there building relationships for your projects, so it's going to be from 6:30 to 8 in Star Auditorium. Please try to get there on time. There's a lot to go over, and we really want to make it a productive and useful workshop for helping folks really start building the foundation of your project.
And let's see. So then reflection papers are due Thursday at noon, and the project report forms also Thursday at noon. So let me just say a little bit about this. This is a challenging course to learn and to teach, and all the way around, because Well, we say this is a course in leadership, not a course about leadership, which is a really important distinction. You know, we can have like theories of leadership and deal with concepts till we're blue in the face, and it's great. So we learn different concepts. But leadership is not a concept, it's a practice, which means that it has emotional challenges, it has skills challenges, and it has conceptual challenges. And so in thinking, well, how do you teach a course about leadership? You said, well, you got to create conditions that require the exercise of leadership. And that means, by definition, enabling others to achieve purpose in the face of uncertainty. And that you can't fake it. It's got to be kind of real. Otherwise, how do you have a chance to develop your muscles at it? Organizing then as developing leadership, so not even my own, but developing the leadership of others, building community around that leadership, and then trying to take seriously this question of power, this question of capacity to actually be able to do things and make things happen. And so we've structured it around these three, core concepts that we'll keep coming back to. People, meaning constituency, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. Change, meaning actual, visible, concrete, measurable change, outcomes, objectives. And in between the change and the people, power. How people can actually use their resources in new ways to achieve change. Not be given change, not receive change, but be parties in the making of whatever the change may be, of whatever scale. So there's this theoretical foundation, and it's based on these 5 practices of relationship building, storytelling, strategizing, structuring, and action, which are the underpinning of the course. But then we coupled it then with a practical foundation, or the experiential foundation. And of course, the relationship workshop this week, the team launch workshop next week, and the skill session that we had on Saturday are all intended to engage. Yes, there are actual skills and practices involved here. It's not just conceptual, it's also practical. And then we work at putting them together. And just before I want to say something about putting them together, but what were your takeaways from the skill session on Saturday? What were some of the what was left, what stayed with you after that experience? I mean, I noticed out here, who put up the sign out there? If I were president for a day? Was that your group? Yeah, let's see that group. Who was that? All right. That was their skill session thing, right? Who put it out there? Well, there it is. So now it's a part of the forum. That's pretty cool. You seize the public space, the forum, and you just like. No. So what are some of the for folks that because we have to reschedule and we're not able to be there, we reached out and contacted about 920 people to engage in some form of commitment, some form of activity in an hour, a little bit over an hour on the street. In a whole, it was 21 different teams doing all different kinds of projects. But I'd like to get some of the folks that were there to, what are some of your takeaways as you reflect on it? Yeah, Masha?
It's really difficult to sort of force identifying the shared values and exactly what it is that you would be working on together. While everything we experienced on Saturday was challenging and therefore really useful, it was difficult to move forward without having established a real sort of good amount of time to identify what it is that brings you four together.
All right, what else? What are some other takeaways that you had from that experience? Yeah. Right.
I think part of it that we learned was finding a balance between actions that are quick and easy, but also meaningful. So we had a choice of people using social networks to tweet things or calling elected representatives, and most of them wanted to call elected representatives because they felt more meaningful and satisfying than just sending something out.
So again, this thing, because one of the themes here is about what can you actually focus on doing that you can actually do, but then how is it also meaningful? That it's not a trade-off between, world significance and triviality. It's like finding the sweet spot there. What else? Yeah.
I found that it was most productive just to go and get out there, and you didn't have to crystallize exactly what you're going to do for them.
Yeah. I hope that's an important takeaway because you know, this sort of, what Jane Addams called the snare of preparation. You know, getting stuck in this sort of, I'm not ready yet, I'm not ready yet, I'm not ready yet. I've got to get it all figured out, I've got to get it right, and then finally, then I'll finally be ready to act. Well, forget it, you know, it's not how it works. Because all that time you're spending in preparation and not acting, you're also not getting the information that comes from acting. And so really, the learning you need only begins when you get out there in action. And so all you're doing is delaying getting the learning you need in order to be effective. Now, of course, that means that your first actions are likely not to be 100% super fantastic perfect, right? But that's the price of getting the information you need for action. And so that's a very, very important piece. Yeah?
I think it is also useful to share how you get up after many rejections.
Mm.
We are bound to get rejections. And, I mean, personally, I had to take a lot of time to reflect on what you told us. Andrew, can you speak up, please? Sorry. Yes, I said we are bound to have rejections when we do those kind of work. So we'd better train ourselves to get up once this is going to happen. So it's you can be always very humble. That is something that helps, of course, but still you need energy to, you know, to see yourself and say, okay, we have to continue.
So sources of resilience is how I put that, because again, in this kind, you're going to get rejections. You will encounter loss, defeat. This is sort of part of acting in the world. So then the question is, how do you access the sources of resilience that you need in order to move forward and not get crippled by it? Yeah.
Well, what I find interesting is because at first we are assigned to be in a pair. So we need to find something in common. So each individual is different. So we might have different interests, different concerns or priorities. But we take the hint from the teaching that we need to talk to each other. We need to ask questions. So we ask. And finally, we found something interesting enough for both of us. And the next challenge is we need to pair with another pair. And again, we start the whole process again. But in the end, we can find something interesting enough for the four of us. And the next challenge is how to turn it into a commitment, how to act now. So I found it interesting, and I can observe the dynamics and learn something.
Did you get some people to support you out there in the street?
Well, our project is on proposing migration reforms.
Yeah.
So yes, we found some. We targeted 40, but we got something like 30.
Yeah.
So we got some support, but most of them are. Our observation is young people.
Yeah.
When we approach some middle-aged man or old citizen,
oh no! I feel bad for that. Yeah. Yeah.
So to build on the jumping right in and learning right away, we found that it was really important to be agile and adaptable, both in our overall strategy. So what is it that we're trying to accomplish, but also with every individual, those area tactics to whoever it was in front of us.
No, it's very good. There's a lot of adapting in action. Yeah, Marika.
I was surprised. I sort of thought this was pivoting around like how social and extroverted you were, and it really doesn't have very much to do with that. Kind of how successful you are. That's what I'm like.
Say more about that. How so?
Well, I never thought of myself as someone who's scared to talk to people, but I was very bad at this task. And so I think there's a lot more art around this than just being extroverted or just.
What do you think was going on? You said you were very bad at this task. What do you think was going on?
Well, it was nice because actually Fawn was one of my pairs, and she's very experienced at this, so she would kind of watch. And my impulse was to just sort of keep talking when it got awkward. And that's not a very good strategy.
All right, good. All right.
And it was really nice to have Fawn jump in and say, "Oh, well, let's give them a second to like finish." Yeah. We had a texting activity. Let's we can just be quiet while they're texting.
This is good. This is good information. Yeah, Vivek?
I thought it was important to have fun, and our group I was carrying around like a little speaker on my phone, and we were just playing random music as we talked to people, which was kind of weird at times. Where's the music coming from? We also just had a lot of colors, and it just seemed like we were having fun, and I think especially because it was a snowy, kind of cold day, nobody, I think you mentioned that nobody wants to be involved in like a dour, very super serious, over serious
Yeah,
event.
come over
So-
here and join me. Yeah, no.
We're just gonna walk right by, so.
Justin?
Yeah, I wasn't expecting to, in acting in a way that was in accordance with some deep values that I held, I wasn't expecting to, how powerful that would be to kind of realize my values in action. So it's easy to write a paper about it or talk to folks about it while you're having lunch, but when you go on the street and you do something and you start seeing yourself acting in accordance with what you believe inside, it was really empowering in that way.
Oh, that's really interesting. You know, that's well, there's a lot more. I mean, but as I say, we wanted to try to focus on the fact that this is about doing, not just about thinking about doing, with all its joys and sorrows. I mean, because that is part of the deal. And of course, the whole idea of the pedagogy then is to link these two, is to link this conceptual with the practical experience and with the emotional capacity, which was mentioned by several people, to deal with it and to handle it. And so that's the thinking behind the projects and the papers and the presentations that we've seen as points of integration, points where we're trying to bring that stuff together. Now, we just, everybody got feedback on their first. These were unusual reflection papers because they were more like an effort to describe your conception of your project at this point. And from now on, the reflection paper is going to be a little different. It's going to be actually more reflective of your own thinking, your experience of dealing with the project and conceptual. But we wanted to start off by trying to get clear in terms of what a project needs to look like in order for you to take advantage of the learning opportunity of the class. And it's not like organizing is not the only activity in the world. I mean, it is one way of dealing with these kinds of problems. And so getting clear on what is, what isn't, and what we're going to focus on seemed very, very important. So we tried to be as direct as we possibly could in the feedback. And I know that may have been maybe, I don't know, a little too direct. I hope not. But I mean, I guess my view is that it's far better to be really clear and direct up front than 6 weeks down the road, maybe we should, you know what I mean? It's just, and so it's in that spirit that this was undertaken, and I hope you'll appreciate that. We really wanted to try. So based on that first round of, writing up possible projects and feedback you got, what is your understanding? What is your sense now of what it's going to take to make a really good project for purposes of this class? What's the sense you get? Yeah, Sarah.
I think that it's very important that we actually really know what our creative change, and make it so specific and solid, and maybe not just make it so broad. Like for instance, for me, I said I need to create awareness. Is that the only thing? No, I need to dig deeper and see what are actually the more.
Yeah, this theory of change piece about how do I get from A to B to C to D, really important. And it evolves and so forth. But if it's sort of like well, I'm going to pass out I'm going to get a bunch of signatures saying X, that the school should do X, and then the school will do it. Wait a second. There's a little missing term in there, which is how is it that second condition is going to come about based on the first one? And so that whole struggling with that piece is so important to really be specific about, and as specific as you can be. Now again, we're just getting into it, so things will change. So it's more a way of thinking about it than it is that the content is fixed, if that makes sense. It's more trying to think in very specific terms and ways, and that word is going to run through everything. It's specific, 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 specific. That's sort of the mantra, Anyway, what else? Yeah.
I think what
I don't see your name card.
I don't have a name card. Sorry, my name is Noah.
All right, Noah.
I think that we have certain presuppositions about what the problem is based upon our experience or anything, but that very quickly can not actually be the problem. You can realize that you're sort of just casting your own sort of glare upon the situation. You just figure, I want to do this because I think this is the way it is. when in reality it isn't. So I think that adaptability is going to be important.
And how do you deal with that? How do you correct that?
Well, I think you have to come from a place of humility, where you're trying to serve, not sort of be it's that snowflake idea. So you want to help other people develop agency and develop some sort of...
So how do you get that sense of reality then?
I think the one-on-ones are really important.
I mean, that's the deal. You know, there is just no substitute for going out and talking to people. When we were, when the ag labor law passed in California, we had to go and learn how to have representation elections among thousands of farm workers in the state. And we had all these theories about it, and this old organizer from the AFL-CIO came, and he said, well, these are all these great theories, but I can tell you just one thing. What's that? Nothing beats sticking close to the people. And he was just so right, because the more that we were embedded, immersed in the reality of the people whom we were trying to engage, then we knew, we understood. It wasn't, we weren't trying to, you know, go through all kinds of, you know, polling and focus groups and theoretical concepts. We were actually there working with the people. And so the one-on-ones is how you begin to find that out. And so Noah, thank you for that. You're not stuck in an, well, no, I won't make things up. But please do have a name card, so. What else? Yeah.
On that note, would you recommend organizing within a community of which you are a part because you fundamentally understand it better and have better access to the people, even though it might be more challenging / might be interesting to try to organize a community that's fundamentally different?
Either way. I mean, both contexts work. It's just, it's just, they're just different. I mean, if you're working in a community that's different than the one that you're totally familiar with, you have to be a really good listener. You have to give an account of why you're there. You have to be respectful. Of course, you have to be that with anybody. Now, when you work in a community that you grew up in and you're totally familiar with, well, there's certain advantages, but then it can also be very tricky because you have certain kinds of assumptions that you've made and so forth that, in fact, you may need to re-examine. And you also may have baggage there, or you may have a history there. So there's strengths and liabilities in both. And often organizing seems to involve the insider-outsider, the Moses figure. I kind of know this, but then I also have that. I grew up in this community, but I'm the first of my first of my family to go to college. I had that. Now, so what does that mean for me? All right, because I have this and I have that. I think that tends to be a very fruitful place from which to operate, because you're sort of challenging assumptions on both ends. You got to figure out how to deal with it. And so in social movements, it's very common that you have insider-outsider kind of combinations of people. Good question, though. But you got to really know how to ask questions and listen in both contexts. Both, because assumptions can also be a real, that's a good question. What else? Yeah, Swati.
Something that I've been thinking about in my own project is that maybe just one-on-ones, individually just one time, are not really sufficient to organize people, because what I'm asking of them is very, very strong, and it's not going to happen just if I meet someone on the street and say, just come on board and publicly say you're never going to accept dowry. It's a huge thing.
I think so, yeah.
So I'm thinking in terms of even just re-looking at my project and say, forget about 100 people, forget about numbers. Even if it's a very good number, even if I can get 50 people to say that this is what we believe and we're going to speak to our friends, family, and if it would spread like that, it's probably be more realistic.
You may want to just say a word about what your project is. We asked 3 folks if we could post their papers this week so people could take a look at some of the different kinds of projects. And Swati's was one. You want to just say a sentence or two on what your project is?
Yeah, so I'm trying to organize the South Asian diaspora in the Cambridge region to say no to dowry, which is a practice that's prevalent in the South Asian community where the girl's family gives money or gives to the groom's family during the time of the wedding. I'm trying to get 100 individuals, men or women, to get together in a public forum and say that they are not going to accept dowry when they get married or when their children get married.
Challenging project. It's got a specific outcome, right? The clear constituency. There is a theory of change. You see, I mean, that's one of the reasons we have to post that paper. It's just so sort of clear and direct. Very challenging, I might say, and I think it takes a lot of courage to deal with, especially in one's own community. But the clarity of the outcome, the theory of change, and the constituency is something that's really, really helpful, I think, in terms of how to focus. What else? Yeah, thanks for that, Spike. What else? Yeah, way in the back.
I mean, from the feedback that I got, I realized the importance of having a very specific constituency because, you know, that's, as you mentioned, that's where you're getting your one-on-ones, that's where you're getting your information. So just being very specific about who are your people, who are the people that you want to work with, I think that's what I got from the feedback.
Yes, I don't have to underscore that. But what else? What other sort of takeaways, reactions, other than saying, what a check mark? No, but other than that. No, seriously. Because that was, the check minuses were given lovingly, just to understand. I mean, it was an effort to draw attention to a specific thing and say, ooh, look at this. Because, you know, we have every confidence that you're going to be able to. So it's a question of like drawing focus and drawing attention. Yes, Carla.
I think I became really aware of how long I've been in this like nonprofit bubble when I was doing the
nonprofit bubble, yeah.
Yeah, because there's like all these people that speak the very same language that I speak, and I think I've always relied on my own story, having grown up in a low-income community, to be like, well, I understand at a really deep level what's happening here, but understanding that like I've gotten access and privilege in a number of different ways, which has meant that it pushes me farther and farther apart from my own community, and like there's kind of this like inner reconciliation around that, really so that I can do like a lot more thoughtful reflection about what it means to actually change a problem within my community.
That's great, Carla. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's yeah, it's very good. Anything else? Yeah, Steve.
So I know we're not there yet, and maybe this is kind of like the negotiator in me coming through a little bit, but I'm wondering when we get to a point where we feel like we need to change course, you know, something's going wrong or something that we envisioned isn't probably going to come to fruition. I'm just wondering, like, to what extent, as organizers, we should be going for, you know, the gold, going for everything that we set out to get, versus changing expectations, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a great question. You mean like sort of off the cliff, kind of? No, we don't want that.
When do you compromise?
Yeah, no, look, as we tried to explain, you start with conceptualizing what a project might be. Might is the operative word. Because you don't have a lot of the information you need, right? And so there's this tension between how I imagine this could be and then the information I'm getting daily on what is. As an organizer, I've got an idea. I go start talking to people in the community. They got a very different idea. Well, guess what? There needs to be a dialogue there. There needs to be some engagement. Because it's not like I got the idea, now you all just fit into my box, right? But it's also not like, well, what do you want to do? I'm here to serve you. Well, what are you talking about? It's either one. See, either one just is not where it's again, it's the tension. It's and you're going to hear probably again and again and say, the tension is where the creativity is. The tension is where the learning is. And it's that tension between those two. I have an idea. I need to hear because other people have ideas. And how do I find the sweet spot through that? That's a lot of what this is about. And so, yeah, Steve, you start down a path and you say, wait a second, this is just not happening. So you don't want to keep going down that path. You retool. And I mean, you know, in the course of the semester, people change projects. People adapt their goals. This is not an exercise in designing a blueprint and then just going and applying that, you know, forcing it upon the world. It's much more about engaging in a dialogue with the world, but with a vision of where you would like to take the world. And so, yeah, people will change projects. We've had people sometimes change a project like, you know, just like 4 weeks before the end of the semester. I mean, but see, that's okay. It's not like, well, don't be committed to your project. I'm not trying to say that. But I'm trying to say, learn, pay attention, and have good reason for what you're doing. That's all. Is that? Yeah, don't get hung up on, oh, God, I said I was going to do it. You know, that could be a real dead end. There's a time to cut your losses and say, oop, going down the wrong path. I'm going to try this other thing over here. And we'll support you with that. I mean, it's not going to, okay. So this question of clarity about constituency, about outcome and about how you achieve the outcome, the theory of change that Sarah started off with. That is really the heart of the matter, people, power, and change, but in a very specific way. And the more specific you are, the better the feedback we can give you, and the more the thing becomes a test of actual learning and evidence and seeing what, and not getting lost in the theoretical mists of, whatever, because that's not going to be too helpful. There's the question of organizing versus mobilizing. Let me just say something about that. See, what goes with the idea, I've got the idea, just fit into my idea, and so therefore I just want you to do this thing. Which there's a time for that. I mean, in an election, you're trying to mobilize people to turn out and vote. Organizing's about more than that, though. It's about engaging people in using their minds, not just their hands, and becoming parties to the process of figuring out what's going on. Because that's how people come to own it. And then you build something. Then when that event, the fundraiser, the rally, whatever is over with, you didn't just have a fundraiser, you build some new capacity. There's a new organization or organized set of people that didn't exist before that you created in the course of putting on that event or whatever it is. So we're going to push you a lot on the distinction between mobilizing and organizing. And we'll challenge you to move toward the organizing side, to actually engaging people and thinking with you and owning with you rather than just doing for you. And that's one other one. Yeah, I think we covered a lot of the other stuff. Yeah, coming up with these outcomes that actually are meaningful but specific, that's another part of the deal. So I don't know, is this helpful? I mean, like I say, we graded these first papers in such a way as to provoke reflection and looking at it and analysis, and that's what we want to work with you on. Just in terms of papers, yeah, we asked Swati and is it Fiza? Fiza. How do I say it? Fiza. And Inbaz. Where's Inbaz? Inbaz here. Okay. Well, those were the three papers that we asked to post. Take a look. They're going to be there. They're three very different kinds of projects, but what they have in common is specificity, focus, and you can kind of see who the people are and how it could happen, and the connection between the outcome and the intention there. And so in these reflection papers this week, I just say a moment about that. At the end of the organizing notes, each section, there are some questions. Now those questions are just guiding questions. They're not like a questionnaire, okay? So it's not like this last paper, we really wanted people to grapple with the theory of change and try to think through it. These are more like suggested guiding questions, because the purpose of that paper is to say, okay, relationships. Okay, what do I think about? What's happening in my project with that? What do I think about that? How's it working? What are my thoughts? What are my challenges? What am I struggling with? It's to use the paper for that kind of a reflective exercise. And it's coupling or linking your own process as a learner, the experience you're having in your project, and whatever the conceptual work is that we're doing that week. This week is relationships. And so that's the purpose of those papers. And also the presentations will have, who's presenting this week? Let me see. So in the presentations, again, the idea is to a little bit about yourself, your project, and then focusing in on what the topic is this week. And the idea is not so much to present questions so that you get advice. You notice something about it? When everybody's ready to give advice, what do you think that's about? I got this problem about getting people to commit, and so then everybody jumps in and says, well, you could do this, you could do. What's going on, do you think? Everybody's just trying to be helpful? Yes, no? How easy is it to give advice? How easy is it to reflect on your own challenge with that question and put that out there and sort of, I'm struggling with that too, and here's how. Do you see what I mean? So the idea is to avoid advice giving in favor of learning. But that means, what Ronnie Heifetz calls work avoidance. That means not avoiding, that work. And so the idea of these presentations, present the presentations, there'll be questions, but then it's to get into a conversation that's going to be fruitful for everybody in this section, not just giving advice to somebody on, well, you should try blue paper instead of yellow paper because, that always works, or whatever. That's not that helpful. Yes?
I think the opposite is true as well. It's very easy for us to see things instead of offer another lens or perspective or even a solution to the
So what kind of lens or perspective is going to be most useful, do you think?
Just any alternate perspective.
What do you think is going to make the biggest contribution? Yes, what? But what about contributions from your own project? See, if you're saying, I struggled with that, and here's what happened to me. Yes, exactly. See, then you're bringing your experience into the conversation, rather than just being this voice out here saying, oh, use yellow instead of blue. Not so helpful. But the more that people bring their own experience into the discussion, the richer it becomes, because then we've got a lot of experience and data on the basis of which to have the conversation, rather than one person's project that everybody's just focusing on giving them advice about. So it's a skill. It's something that we have to learn to do, and we will learn. Yeah, the bank.
I'm sorry to put this out there, but what if you're totally lost?
If you're totally lost, but say so and ask for help. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I mean, yeah, say so. Ask the question. Okay, I'm not getting this. I don't get what's going on here.
Okay, I'm not getting this.
Are you not getting what I'm saying right now?
So, we're in our projects, but I don't know, is anyone else as confused? I feel like it's the same as the beginning of the public narrative session, where there's a lot of confusion at the beginning, and it takes time to. Maybe I'm just slow, and everyone else is.
No, I don't think so. How many people have some level of confusion about their projects? You're in good company. You're in good company, and no, see, I think the reality, like the public narrative thing, I can sit here and talk about stuff till I'm blue in the face. It's not going to help. I mean, the reality is, it's sort of like getting familiar with something that's strange, and trying it on, and seeing what fits, and stretching it, and then sort of coming to it. Frankly, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so at least we're not lost about that.
So you want to keep working on it.
You just have to keep working, because it is unfamiliar stuff, and so more explanation doesn't take the place of experience and reflection. And that's what we're trying to get to here. All right, so let's move on here. Thanks. All right. So the focus of this week then is to focus on the fundamental skill, the fundamental practice of organizing, and that is relationships, one-on-one meetings, building relationships. And in terms of why would you think it is so fundamental? I mean, who's got thoughts on it? In other words,